All right, I'm gonna keep it real. I just got done doing the entire video. I recorded like 45 minutes of footage, and then I go and check the footage and I find out that my mic was muted the entire time. So here I am. I have to redo it again. It's gonna be a little bit faster because I just don't have the stamina to do the exact same 40-minute speech about all the teams twice in a row. So I apologize if this seems a little bit rushed, but I do really want to get this video out. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to go over the original predictions that I did. I'm going to go through what actually happened, and then I'm going to take the 24 teams that are in, and I'm going to give them all power rankings. Here are the predictions that I initially made. It's highlighted red if I was completely wrong. It's highlighted green if I got it exactly right, and it's highlighted orange if the team is right, but the position that they got in was incorrect. Down here is what actually happened. If it's highlighted yellow, it means that they're locked into that seed. If it's red, that means that the team is in, but not in the right slot, or in the case of the TCL, it just means that they literally haven't played finals yet. TCL, I originally predicted Nassar. They didn't make it. They got knocked out in semifinals. From the LLA, I predicted Gillette Infinity. They got knocked out in like the second round of losers bracket. It wasn't even close. And then Isourus Gaming beat Astral in the final, which I was never expecting. So I did not do any research on Isourus. I didn't watch any of their games other than the finals highlights. And so for that reason, in my power rankings, I have them as an NA because I'm not qualified to give them a ranking at all. So I'm just not going to bother doing it. From the LCO, I got the Chiefs right. I got Detonation Focus Me right. I'm really happy that I got Loud right because they were like 5-6 at one point in regular season, and then they ended up getting knocked down to losers bracket, clawing their way all the way through, and then beating Pain Gaming in the finals 3-0 to take the slot. So that's definitely one of the predictions that I'm super proud of. I got the VCS right. Gigabyte Marines beat Saigon Buffalo a 3-0 in the finals. In the PCS, I predicted PSG and J Team. They both got knocked out in the semifinals. So these four teams were the four semifinalists. But CFO, Flying Oyster, and Beyond Gaming got the better of them. I really don't know how Beyond Gaming is here. They did not look impressive in the regular season, so I wouldn't call it a fluke because the PCS gauntlet to make it to Worlds is really tough. You have to play a lot of series, and Beyond Gaming did win pretty much everything all the way up to the finals to get there, so they deserve it, but I'm just skeptical about their team. From the LCS, I predicted TL would make it over 100 Thieves. That did not happen. As for the order that I put them in, I just have EG last here because they're not playing Danny this weekend, so I don't really know how good their team's going to look. And then I just have C9 over 100 Thieves since it already happened once, and as you can see from my original predictions that I'm a 100 Thieves hater, not a big 100 Thieves fan. I don't think that their playstyle is going to stack up well. They seem to be a team that relies really heavily on their players being better than the other team's players, which is why they look so dominant in NA, but I just don't think they really have the strategies and the drafts to beat some of the top teams from the LPL, LCK. From the LEC, I had Mad as first, then Mad went to win absolutely nothing, and now they're fourth. And then Fnatic had a really, really nice turnaround, so Fnatic and Rogue are in. XL lost to Fnatic in the first round, so they're out, and then Vitality didn't even qualify for playoffs because they went like 0-4 to end the season. From the LCK, I got the T1 Genji matchup wrong. The meta is really just not favoring T1 right now, so Genji was able to overtake them. I also feel like the super team veteran roster, they got the extra split to kind of connect with each other, and now they look a lot better chemistry-wise than before. DRX is really a shocker. I would have told you that DRX was the sixth best team from the LCK. I would have had both KT and Live Sandbox over them, but DRX is here, and they did it with a substitute jungler too, so you know, that's all good. All right, so JDG Top Esports, I got their seedings right. I got RNG right. V5 did not make it. They finished the season 6th, and then EDG did make it. In my initial predictions video, I did say that I thought EDG could make it, but I did point out that I only thought it would happen if they played Jungia. They did play Jungia for a solid portion of playoffs, but they also played a lot of JJ, and JJ did win the games in their later series, so I can't say I was right about that. So that goes over all of my predictions of what actually happened. Now to get into the power rankings. From the TCL is not decided yet. But if Fenerbahce wins, I have them as 23rd. If IW wins, I have DFM as 23rd. So the deal with DFM is that they lost their star mid laner, Arya. Arya went to KT, played a little bit in the LCK on KT, didn't look that great and got benched. So DFM does not have their star mid laner anymore. They still have the same bot lane, the same top lane. I still have a lot of faith in Evi. but I just feel like without having those two strong solo lanes, that DFM is not going to do that great. Especially because I view the LJL as the second weakest region. I would only put the LCO behind them. So I don't think DFM really has that much of a challenge in their region, and I think their team is a lot less solid than before, so that's where I have them. If Fenerbahce make it through, DFM would be 22nd. If IW makes it through, I have IW here. I have a history of highly overrating the TCL. I said Galatasaray last year was going to be 11th in Worlds. I had them as the 11th best team. They had both Balulu and Zergsting on their roster. Big fan of both of those players. They did okay. They started play-ins 2-0 and then ended the play-ins group as third. So I'm not super upset about it. But this year, IW has... I always view IW as a really good team, and then they always seem to disappoint on the international stage. At both MSIs, they went either 1-5 or... I don't even remember if they won a game this MSI. I still think Starscreed is a great player. I still think that their roster is overall pretty solid. Like, Holy Phoenix has a good ADC, but they always just seem to be outclassed at international, and this is going to be the year that I finally put a stop to giving TCL the crazy high predictions, and I'm going to say that they're a bottom minor region team, as much as it hurts me as a TCL lover. Okay, so 21st. This is where I'm going to put the Chiefs. The Chiefs is kind of the one super team that the LCO has. It was actually a shock to everybody when Order made it to MSI, but the Chiefs are a really solid looking team. They have a lot of familiar faces like Bobip and Tally, who have both made it to international before. Their ADC is Raze, who played in the LCS on Immortals last year. So they have a solid roster. They stomp every single team in Oceania. They're like that one super team that Osh has. So they're definitely a good team. I don't think that they have the ceiling as any of the other teams in the competition, and I think that they are going to make a swift exit in the play-ins, although I would not be surprised if they took a game or two. In 20th, I have Beyond Gaming. Again, I'm very, very skeptical about Beyond Gaming because they were middle of the pack, finished like 5th or 6th or something in regular season, and then they just proceeded to kind of stomp their way through playoffs before they got 3-0'd by Flying Oyster in the finals. So while they deserve their spot, I do not think they are very good. They have a couple of the same players from last year. Like, they still have Husha. I was very happy with Husha last year. I thought he was the star of Beyond Gaming, even better. I thought Husha was even better than Doggo going into Worlds. And then, of course, Doggo has a complete pop-off at Worlds and then makes it into the LPL. But other than Husha, I don't think Beyond Gaming really has anything going for them. In the finals, their solo lanes just got completely gapped, solo killed left and right, all that whatever. So in 19th, I have Loud. And the sole reason why I have Loud over teams like the Chiefs and Beyond Gaming is because I really, really like Loud's solo lanes. In the top lane, they have Robo. Robo has, in other international competitions, proven to be stable, which is really all that you need from a minor region top laner. And then their mid laner, Tanones, I actually think is good enough to make a splash in the world of mid laners. I think Tanones is the best mid laner historically that has ever existed in the CBLOL. I think that most CBLOL fans would agree with me that Tanones is kind of like their goat of mid lane, and I definitely have faith that he can make sure that Loud does not embarrass themselves in play-ins. In 18th, I have 100 Thieves. I have a notorious history of always underrating 100 Thieves. I think that their playstyle is very much, we are better than you and we will win, or we are worse than you and we will lose. And I don't think that playstyle really works in international. If you want proof of how much I don't have faith in 100 Thieves, look no further than my initial predictions, where I don't have them as top 3. But, you know, NA is my region, so if they happen to prove me wrong and make it out of groups or something, I will happily accept it. In 17th, I have Mad. I initially thought Mad was like much better than where they are now. There's the whole meme going around about how they made Worlds without winning a single best of 5, which, yes, haha, very funny. But like, their series against Fnatic did not look all that great, right? So I don't really have faith in them moving forward anymore. I still think, you know, Kaiser's one of the better supports in the entire West. Niski's a really solid mid lane, Western standards, and then Elyoya's in the conversation for best jungler in the LEC, although there's a couple of names you could toss around for that. In 16th, though, to accompany Matt, I have Rogue. Rogue just has a history of one, not showing up in international competitions, and two, I really think that Malrong's going to get punished in Worlds. He has a playstyle where he kind of sacrifices everything that he has, all of his resources, and then tries to give it to his lanes via ganks and jungle pressure. And I feel like if you're not giving yourself resources in the jungle, then you're going to lose against most of the other junglers that are on top. Like all of the LPL junglers and LCK junglers are just going to look at Malrong and kind of laugh in his face and then carry the game. That's how I see it anyway, so I don't really think Rogue is going to look that strong. I feel like if the meta was like only Jarvan and Lee Sin, Malrong is probably a little bit better here, but that is not the case. You have a lot of junglers who like to farm a little bit more, like Poppy Wukong. You even have junglers like Kanavi pulling out Belveth, or junglers like Levi pulling out Nocturne. And in those cases, Malrong's just going to get run over, and Rogue are going to slowly lose. So I don't have them any higher than 16th. I also want to point out that I really think that with the VCS being back and getting 2 slots, and then the PCS getting 2 slots, that the teams this year are a lot more stacked than last year. I think that it's a more of an even playing field. So even though it's weird that I have LEC and LCS teams here, it does make a little bit more sense in my head, because I've always viewed VCS and PCS as being at the same level, if not higher, than LCS. Speaking of the VCS, I have Saigon Buffalo here. Saigon Buffalo has a bunch of familiar faces because their team went to MSI. At the time that they went to MSI, they went as the 2 seed of the VCS. The winner of the VCS, which was Gigabyte Marines in the spring, went to represent the Vietnam in the SEA Games. So Saigon Buffalo was always the second best team. And I've always thought of Gigabyte Marines as being significantly better than all of the other teams in the VCS. In the finals, Gigabyte Marines just straight up 3-0'd Saigon Buffalo. So I feel like Gigabyte Marines is going to be that dark horse that a lot of teams are going to sleep on. But, Saigon Buffalo still has 5 solid players. They still gave T1 some scares at MSI, so they're definitely a team that you cannot underestimate. In 14th, I have EG. Usually I would put EG, I would bump EG up a couple slots, but EG's core identity is that they like to funnel their gold into Danny, their ADC, and then Danny carries the later team fights. But Danny is not going to be playing this weekend due to mental health issues. He has stepped aside. And if he is not feeling stable by Worlds, then that means that EG would have lost their entire team identity. And if they don't have an identity by Worlds, I don't think that they'll do very well. They still have Inspired, who is one of the best Western junglers that's out there. So I don't think that it's a complete lost cause, but I would not put them in the top half of teams with their current mental state. In 13th, I have CFO, Flying Oyster. Their team is looking overall pretty stock standard solid. However, if you watch their series against Beyond Gaming, it was not like, it was a 3-0, but it was not the most impressive 3-0 you've ever seen in your life. In both Game 1 and Game 3, Beyond Gaming got ahead early, and CFO kind of looked lost in the early game. They had a lot of lane problems. So I really just, if they continue to have bad early games, then they will not be able to make comebacks. I like to think of CFO as like a slightly better Misfits, in the sense of like they go down early and then they come back later. But there are some teams here where if you go down early, you are not coming back. And so I think that CFO is not a top half team, as much as I like the PCS. Moving on to the top half, the first pick I have is C9. It feels weird having C9 as the best NA team, but one, you have to remember that they started out the season with a horrible record. They started out like 0-3, 0-4 or something because they couldn't get their full roster together. And so with that in mind, they're a lot more winning than it looks like on paper. And also I feel like their roster just has the most international potential. Berserker's ceiling is way up there. Like, we don't know how good he can get. He could be like one of the best Western ADCs of all time. That's what I think his ceiling is. So it just depends. He could always show up. I think Sven has definitely proven that he's one of the better supports in the West, so it'll be fun to see that bot lane pairing. Jensen has always historically done well in international competition, so I have faith that he'll be stable. And then Blabber, I think, is the best jungler in NA. Only other argument you could make is Inspired. If somebody said Inspired, I would agree with them too. I think Blabber, Inspired, 1-2. And then if you have watched other prediction videos on this channel, you already know what I think about Fudge. I am a huge Fudge lover. I think Fudge is like top 2 or 3 players in the entire LCS. I wouldn't even be that upset if somebody said he was the best player in the LCS. Might be a little bit of copium, but I'm a really big Fudge fan. I like the C9 roster. I think that they'll do well in Worlds. Like, if you think back to when C9 made MSI, like, let's not sugarcoat it. Fudge was literally the best performing top laner at MSI that year out of all of the teams, all of the regions. So they've definitely got international potential. They also have the potential to completely flop. So we'll see. But I like C9 as a team internationally. In 11th, I've got DRX. I really just don't think DRX is very great. They have some unstable roster issues in the jungle because their main jungler, Pioshik, has been subbed out a couple of times. Their team is also just... They have not looked good all season. They were a bottom LCK team, like bottom half LCK team all year. And it's weird to see them in the fourth slot. I feel like they kind of stole it, but in general, I just don't really have faith in DRX. But they do have a couple of very solid faces that will just by name alone put them ahead of a lot of the other teams. In 10th, I've got Fnatic, but there's like a big asterisk next to this one because regular season Fnatic, you're putting them like somewhere around like you're putting them like 20th, 21st. But how they've been looking in playoffs, if they keep that form, they look great. Upset and Hylissang are looking back to their form. Humanoid's starting to look more like Humanoid was supposed to look like. Razork has finally looked like he's fitting into the team. And then, of course, Wonder is Wonder. He's always going to be great. So if Fnatic continue to look like this, then I think 10th is a great spot for them. In 9th, I have Damwon Kia. Damwon Kia, on paper, their roster should have looked really good. When I initially saw their roster before Spring Split started, I thought that it was a roster that had more potential than their 2020 Worlds winning roster. I thought that Doc Dom and Kellen had the potential to be better than Ghost and Barrel, but Doc Dom really has just not shown up. I was a big fan of Doc Dom when he was on Nongshim, but he's just not having the same impact now. Showmaker and Canyon both seem to be out of the loop a little bit, and then Nogri is just not looking like the same Nogri that we knew. Like, Nogri used to be a monster who you feared, and now he's just kind of playing tanks, standard picks, kind of silently, going even in lane. So, I mean, like, as it looks now, Damwon Kia is very unimpressive. However, their ceiling is very high. Like, if Nogri comes back to form, if Canyon Showmaker figure it out, if Doc Dom returns to how he looked last year, Damwon Kia could shoot up a lot of spots. In 8th, I have my first team from the LPL, EDG. My main problem with EDG is that I feel as though their unstable roster is going to come to bite them a little bit. JJ has some games where he looks really inconsistent, and they have to sub in Junjia. And while on paper the rosters with both JJ and Junjia look good, the fact that they continue to just swap time over and over again means that their teams are going to be a little bit less familiar and coordinated than all the other teams. So I definitely, like, even when they're on top form, I feel like they're worse than top esports and JDG. And with them being a little bit questionable, and with RNG seeming to finally figure out what they want to do with their top laner, I feel like EDG has a pretty solid argument for being worst performing team from the LPL. In 7th, I'm finally going to put Gigabyte Marines from the VCS. I think that Gigabyte Marines is going to surprise a lot of people. For starters, like, their jungler, Levi, he's the reason why I got into esports in the first place. Watching him in group stages 2017 on that Gigabyte Marines roster was what made me fall in love with League of Legends, period. He's definitely the most entertaining jungler out there, and I still think he's on top form. And I think Gigabyte Marines has a pretty interesting read on the meta, because right now the meta is kind of ADC dominated. The way that it works is that teams will like to handshake Zeri Sivir, but if one team picks Zeri or Sivir blind and either Draven or Kalista is up, the team will just pick Draven or Kalista and completely stomp the Zeri Sivir. So a lot of teams have been like banning Draven and Kalista on 1 and 2. But Gigabyte Marines has this read where they leave Kalista open, and then if the enemy team picks Kalista, which of course they will because Kalista is considered like the strongest ADC right now, Gigabyte Marines has a pocket pick Varus answer that they really like to go to. I'm not exactly sure how the matchup looks, but the logic to me seems to be something along the lines of Varus's E, the slow field, kind of counters Kalista a little bit. And then if Kallista's trying to engage, like hopping forward aggressively, Varus has the ult to peel backwards. Kind of just like defensive utility ADC, like kind of silencing the Kalista and then outscaling her. So I think it's interesting. Again, I don't exactly know how the matchup works, but it seems to be something that they're really familiar with. I think Gigabyte Marines is definitely very, very solid. I think that from non-major region teams, Gigabyte Marines is the best team out there. And no, I do not consider LCS a major region. All right, so number 6, I have G2. There's not really much to say about G2. I think all around, they're a very solid team. The only thing that I could say is that Flacket and Targamas, I don't think can match up to those top bot laners like Viper Mako or Hope Missing. I don't think that Flacket and Targamas are going to be able to match those. But I mean, like, there's not really anything negative I can say about G2. Like, they have a very solid roster of 5 players. I just think that the teams above them are just have higher ceilings in terms of their rosters. So in 5th, I've got T1. T1 definitely has potential to like make semifinals or finals. The problem is that I don't really feel like the meta's favoring them right now. Gumayusi seems to not be very comfortable on the ADCs that are in, or like the Power 5, which are Lucian, Kalista, Draven, Zeri, and Sivir. He doesn't really seem to be clicking with any of those. And then Owner's main power picks, like the Viego and the Lee Sin, they're not really in meta right now. So I feel like T1's just kind of struggling a little bit in terms of what champions are viable. In 4th, I've got RNG. It feels a little bit weird giving the 4th overall seed on my list to the team that got 4th in the LPL. But the thing with RNG is that they did a swap of top laners at the start of Summer Split. And I feel like it's taken a little bit for them to kind of click. But now that they have clicked, they're going to be really strong. Like, the top laner that they got is Breathe. And in my opinion, if I was going to make like an all-star LPL team, Breathe would be my top laner. I think Breathe is the best top laner in the LPL. He can play literally anything. He can play carries if you need him to. He can stabilize matchups if you need him to. A lot of people kind of forget this, but when Breathe was on WE last year, he literally hard carried that team every single game. And now that he left, WE is the worst team in the league, you know. But yeah, I just think that RNG's finally got it together, and that Breathe is finally clicking with the team. And as long as that is happening, RNG is definitely a contender to win Worlds, even though they're in play-ins. In 3rd, I've got Top Esports. Top Esports is really fun to watch. They have Knight, who I think is a top 5 mid laner of all time. Tien is looking back on form. Hopefully he doesn't have any injuries or sicknesses like last year, but Tien is looking great. And then Top Esports has Jackie Love, and Jackie Love is one of the best ADCs at Worlds. However, Top Esports, I don't have full faith in because Jackie Love is not the best ADC at Worlds. If you put him against people like Ruler or Viper, Jackie Love just gets outclassed. And it's always felt like in all of the years that Jackie Love has been on top, that Jackie Love is better than 95% of ADCs. And if he is better, he will stomp the game and carry. And if he's worse, then he'll be the reason why his team loses. So, and then they also, in finals, Top Esports was swapping their top laners between Wayward and Jintian. And if their top lane is unstable like that, I don't think that their roster is going to be winning Worlds. To me, it seems like Wayward's always outperforming Jintian, but if there's like some kind of inner conflict or personality issues that we don't know about, that'll really hurt the team. So I don't have confidence to give them 2nd, so 3rd is where they are. In 2nd, I've got Gen G. Gen G just overall looks extremely solid. Their roster has all 5 of their players on that roster are top 10 players in their role of all time. So obviously it's like a great team. I feel like they've gotten a split to kind of put it all together, and now their chemistry is a lot better. The metas seems to be kind of favoring their playstyle right now too. The only problem that I have with giving them the number 1 seed is that when I think about their matchup against JDG, who I have number 1, the way that I kind of see it going is that Chovy is going to be a little bit better than Yagao, but Yagao has really been finding his footing. He seems to have a really great Azir all of a sudden. He's got those playmaking champions he can use, so I think he can stabilize the mid lane matchup. And then Hope and Missing have been able to stabilize like Viper, right? And so I think that Ruler's going to not be able to find too many advantages there. And then you look at topside, 369 in my eyes just completely gaps Doran, and Kanavi completely gaps Peanut. So to me, I look at that matchup, all I see is a top gap, like topside gap. So JDG gets 1 seed over Genji, and that is my entire list. Again, I'm sorry that it's a little bit shorter. I just, I recorded my entire speech once, and I figured out that my mic was not working, and so my throat is tired. There are some things that I probably said the first time that I just forgot to say this time, but there it is, my entire power rankings for Worlds. Leave a comment flaming me and dislike the video. It's always really interesting to read comments about what people think, especially if they disagree, because then we get to have nice discussions in the comments. And historically, I'm always wrong with this, so feel free to flame me because there's a good chance you'll be right. But that is my entire list, and that's everything I got. So thanks for watching. Peace.